Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope things have been well for you since the last time we spent some time together. I just had a first craft fair of 2024 season, so pretty excited. It was a good craft fair. It was actually at the school that I teach at, so that was kind of nice overlap of the worlds. Oh, you don't have your craft? Go get it so you can hang out with me and craft too. So craft fairs are always interesting because you have such a variety of vendors there. Like you've got your, what I consider like artists, like your painters and your wildlife photographers, sculptors, people who do things that I can't even imagine how you do them. And then you've got what I consider like the crafters, like me, people who create things with skills that, I don't know, I don't feel like are as intuitive as what my brain associates with artists. Like I feel like anybody can learn to do what I do if they just have the patience to do so. But I don't feel like personally, I don't think I can be taught to be a great painter because I think there's just something about how they see the world that can't be taught. It's just them. And then you've got like the people who are selling product for like Scentsy and things like that, which definitely a small home business, but not, I would consider a craft or an art, right? So it's always interesting seeing the mix of products and skills and artistry at a craft fair. I loved seeing what other people do. There's one lady, she's actually the grandmother of some of my students, a couple of my students, and she takes aluminum cans, like soda cans and drink cans, and she cuts these beautiful intricate butterflies out of them, and she can turn them into magnets and bookmarks, and she's putting together this like big wall piece, I think. I don't know if that's something for sale, if that's like a personal project, but they're beautiful, and at first glance you actually wouldn't even realize that they're aluminum cans. So there's that, and then you have the people that do inlaid stonework, or they do the I don't remember the name of it, but they basically like electrocute wood, and so it creates those beautiful like lightning marks across the wood. It's phenomenal. It's so cool, and they turn them into wall hangings or planters, and just really neat stuff. It's always inspiring to see what other creators do at a craft fair. And then of course there's always the jewelry. So many different ways to make jewelry, whether it's clay or resin, laser cut wood, wire wrapping, which is beautiful. The lady next to me was a wire wrapper, and just so pretty. It made me wish that I wore necklaces more, because I totally would have bought something from you. So I bought earrings instead. But yeah, it's inspiring. So one thing that I think I sometimes take for granted when I'm at a craft fair is I consider what I do relatively simple. Like a focused first, second, or third grader could do what I do. Right? It's measuring with a ruler and then cutting straight lines, so their manual dexterity might not be there, but like in theory they could totally do it. The patience is the one thing that comes up and up again. Is like anybody can do the physical nature of what I do, but the patience and the desire for meticulous activity is not necessarily equally distributed, and that doesn't necessarily come naturally to people. I don't know if you can teach that. That might just be a personality thing. But regardless, I consider what I do relatively simple. So it's still, even after a couple years of doing this, takes me by surprise when visitors to the craft fair, or even my fellow vendors, come over to my booth and express amazement, I guess, maybe surprise at what I do. This book folding in particular, because like the crochet and the cross stitch, that's done by so many different people. It's familiar, right? It's traditional, but the book folding is not. It's not super huge here. So it takes me aback, and I have to maybe look at what I do through their perspective. Like, you cut every single page by hand? They often ask me, is there a machine that you use? And I kind of point to myself like, I am the machine. So I guess it's kind of like with anything in life, right? When something comes easily to you or you enjoy it, you don't necessarily appreciate the challenge in it. The challenge that might pose to other people who maybe don't have your personality profile or your strengths, your skills. So I guess it's eye-opening. It helps me shift my perspective to realize maybe where I fit into the crafting community, as it were. And so it reminded me of something that had come up, kind of like a newsletter email that had been sent out from one of the podcasters that I listen to. She's an evolutionary biologist, and she wrote this newsletter trying to define, or maybe just discuss. Maybe there wasn't an attempt behind her writing. She was just maybe discussing the correlation between science and engineering and art and crafting. So she had separated those things. And her thinking was that science is to art as engineering is to crafting, with the logic that both science and art are seeking out truth, beauty, something ephemeral, something that isn't always necessarily concrete. It's the pursuit of something without necessarily having a set goal in mind. This is her kind of what I took away from her description. Whereas crafting and engineering are both very much concrete goal-oriented activities. If you're engineering, then you are actively trying to solve a problem. If you're crafting, you are actively trying to create an item that maybe serves a certain purpose. And whereas with art and science, it's more that you're exploring possibilities without any assurance that you'll actually find something at the end of that exploration. And I thought it was interesting because in like Instagram and Facebook, when you start to get into the algorithm for as a crafter, you start getting reels and posts and things from other crafters. And so this conversation comes up even among crafters is, what is the difference between a crafter and an artist? Is there a difference? And this is more than just philosophical, because if you're trying to make a business out of this, it actually does matter. When something is considered art, it carries a higher value. the price tag you can put on art is sometimes astronomical. If something is a craft, it doesn't seem to carry as much value. And so the way the customer views you, if they view you as a crafter versus an artist, they may deem your prices unreasonable because you're just selling a craft. Even as a creator, the way that we define ourselves may change how we value what we create. So in my mind, I've always thought of myself as a crafter, not as an artist. And so this predisposes me to probably undervalue what I do. In fact, not probably. Almost every vendor that I talk to, like, who's an actual creator, will freely tell me that I do not price my stuff correctly, that I am vastly underselling my folded books, especially because of the hours. I mean, just the sheer amount of hours that go into them. And I have not yet been able to get up the courage or the confidence to honestly assess the value of what I do, just by the hours. Like, even if I was just asking for half of minimum wage for what I do, I'd probably have to double at least the price of my books. Which, when I think about putting that number on my little price chalkboard, like, I almost feel anxiety. Because I tell myself there's absolutely no way that anybody would want to pay that. Whereas if you were to put up a piece of, like, a painting or a sculpture that took the same amount of hours to do as what I spent on those books, like the book that I'm working on right now, the gift for my former student who just made sergeant in the Marines. This is a 40-plus hour book, not counting the time that I spent talking to my phone. And so the price tag that would go on a work of art that took that long, I wouldn't even bat an eye at it being several $100s. I have a hard time even considering charging $100 for this folded book, because in my head, I'm a crafter. I'm not an artist. So there are actual, like, real implications to how we as creators view ourselves, how we value the time and the effort and the skill that we have, that we put forth into our craft, as well as how the customers view us. So I looked up the definitions because I was curious. Like, is there an actual difference between a crafter and an artist? So here's what I got. A crafter is and this is according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a crafter is a person who makes or produces with care, skill, or ingenuity. Person who makes or produces with care, skill, or ingenuity. Now, I definitely check all those boxes. So, crafter, sure. So here's artist. A person who creates art, which I hate when the word is used in its own definition, but okay. A person who creates art using conscious skill and creative imagination. So the only thing different between those two is the addition of imagination into the artist meaning, and that's lacking from crafter. So then, of course, I was curious, well, what is the difference between ingenuity and imagination? I'm sure you were wondering the same thing. So, ingenuity. Ingenuity is a skill or cleverness in devising or combining. And then a secondary definition is skill and imagination to create new things. So in the crafter definition, the word ingenuity was included, which means that imagination is also in the definition for crafter. Imagination, if we define imagination, is the ability to form mental images of things that are not physically present or have never been conceived or created by others. So that does have a slightly more abstract meaning, right? But with that being said, if we take that definition, the definition of ingenuity into account, that dilutes the difference between crafter and artist. Definition-wise, they're essentially the same thing. So then another word that I'll often throw around, because I'm like, well, I don't want to call myself an artist. It just doesn't feel right. It's like when you look at a word and you know it's spelled wrong, but you can't figure out what's wrong with it. Calling myself an artist just feels wrong. So I use the word artisan. So I looked up what artisan meant just to see if I was even using the word correctly. So artisan is a worker who practices a trade or handicraft, aka craftsperson. So that didn't help me much. It's basically just a synonym for crafter. So after looking at those definitions, I realized that at the heart, I don't think there's that much of a difference. It's how the public views you, and it's how you view yourself. So I think, out of respect for myself and the time that I put into this and the intentional work that I've put into becoming good at what I do, I think I might have to start calling myself an artist, even though it feels wrong. It feels, maybe wrong's not the right word. It feels like it doesn't fit. It is unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar. But I think I'm going to have to sit with it for a little bit until it fits. Now, I will say the first time that I really seriously started thinking about this was a young lady who lives here in town. She purchased one of my books, and she's going to school to be an art teacher. And she saw my work. She bought one of my absolute favorite pieces. I was actually hoping it wouldn't sell, so I'd have a reason to keep it, but she got it. And she asked me to sign the inside of the book. It had never even occurred to me to sign my work. And so that's when I started thinking, what does she see in me that I don't see in myself? What does she see in what I'm creating that I have allowed myself to be blind to? So, yeah, maybe I'm a crafter when I'm making what I'm making, but maybe the artistry is in the design and in the way that I choose to execute my craft. Maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other. I don't know. Do you have opinions on craft versus artist? Do you know why we value art more than craft? Curious. Let me know. Are you a crafter? Are you an artist? Are you both? All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got some crafting done. I got a few pages done myself. And until next time, happy crafting.